If you want to make the best use of your curriculum and your money, this video is for you. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mandy, the Handmade Homeschooler, and today I'm going to give you some tips and tricks to get the most out of your curriculum. So if you've seen any of my videos recently or follow me on social media, you've seen that I was part of the Generations Homeschool Mom panel at their recent workshop. Now, the topic of that was getting the most out of your curriculum. And I feel like this doesn't just apply to generations. I feel like this applies to all brands because these really can be applied throughout different programs, different brands of curriculum. So some of these things might be a little bit more tailored to generations, and I will explain those in further detail. But some of these are going to apply to all different subjects in all different brands. So before I get into that, make sure that you hit the like and the subscribe button, and down below in the description box, I have a link to our free Facebook Christian homeschooling group, and I have links to free trials and things like that, and I have links to Generations curriculum as well. So yes, Generations is pretty much my favorite brand in homeschooling curriculum, and it takes a lot to get me to say that a brand is my favorite. I am quite partial to Generations, but there's reasons for that. And I was really excited to be a part of the Homeschool Mom panel. Now, what I'll be talking about in the video is some of the things that I talked about during the workshop, but I'm going to explain it further because I was limited to just about 5 to 7 minutes, and now I have all the time I want with a camera in front of me. So let's get into it. So one of the things that I really like about Generations is that it's easy to transition my kids into working independently. Now that's going to look different for every family and every child, of course. But for us, that just means that the kids can take the books, they can read what their assignments are, and they can do the work by themselves without having me or their dad hover over them, which frees up me to do other things. So whether that's working with younger children or that is putting the laundry in the washing machine, I have that time back. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't check their work. We absolutely check their work. And that's something that, I make sure that I do every single day. But we also come together and we talk about the work after they've done it too. So we can see if they understood the lesson or if they struggled. And then we can go from there. One of the things about the Generations books, and I think Master Books is like this as well, the student workbook, not the actual textbook, so these are the textbooks, but the actual matching workbooks, they are typically a teacher book and a student book combined. So with that, the schedule is right in the beginning of that book. So I don't have that. Now there's been years where I've torn those out and I've organized it into a binder, and I have there's an old Master Books video on my YouTube channel about that, where I take all of the schedules and I put them in I made my own teacher binder. And that's something you can do too. But now that my kids are older, I don't really feel the need for that unless it's something that I just really want to do for whatever reason. And I might do it next year, I don't know. But this year, I did not do that. I just let the kids have their workbook. I did not tear anything out. And they have been keeping track of their lessons. Now, there is a space beside the lesson for the date, whether or not they completed the assignment, and their grade. And I fill that out daily. And that helps them keep on track as well. So they can just easily flip to the beginning of the book, see what they're supposed to do, and I don't have to do anything. And then when they're done, they bring it to me and show me their work. Totally easy. And they can keep track of it, and it's kind of a responsibility thing. So you're not just teaching independence, but you're teaching the kids responsibility. They are responsible for getting those assignments done. And the older the kids get, the more you want to teach that, because when they're in college, we're not going to be holding their hand. They're going to have to take responsibility for their work. And it's our job as parents to teach them that. So Generations and Master Books both have great setups for that. And I really, really like that. It's also really easy to enrich the studies with these books. Now, you get when we're talking about generations, master books, all kinds of teaching materials, you typically find you have a teacher book, a textbook, workbook, that type of thing, and then test booklets if need be. One of the ways that we enrich the Generations brand books is by looking on their website for books that might pair well with it. So for example, my youngest is doing the Taking Europe for Jesus set. Now that's one of my favorite history curriculums ever, and he is right at the part where they're starting to talk about the Huguenots and the persecution in France. So Generations on their website, I noticed this past week, had a book about the Huguenots, and it was a independent reader. So I purchased that, and it's actually arriving today. So this is a perfect time for that book, and that's going to help enrich what he's learning and expand upon those ideas. So that's a great way to get more out of your lessons. Another thing that we did as a family was we watched On the Shoulders of Giants by Todd Friel and Wretched Radio. And that really took a good look of the whole history of the Reformation in Europe. And it's all the time period right now that my youngest child is studying. So that paired perfectly well with his studies. So books, movies, all kinds of things like that. If you can find those to go with your study, that's going to enhance the learning, and it's going to be a great enrichment activity for your kids to do. This is a bit more tailored to Generations, but it's one of my favorite things that they offer. So in the lower and higher grades, they offer something called the optional enrichment projects. Now those, we call them OEP days. Those are days where you can either do one of three things really. You can do the optional project, you can skip the day, or you can do makeup work that maybe you missed a day or something. So we have done all three of these during different points in our homeschool, and some of these projects are just so much fun that we could not skip them. Some of those days definitely had to turn into makeup days, and some of those days we just felt like we could, we were doing other things, so we skipped that day. You're free to do with it what you want. I love the projects that they have come up with in the Generations curriculum. They have some really neat projects out there if you go through them. I know a lot of people probably want to skip those. Really take a look at those. They have some really cool things, everything from kinesthetic type of things to writing papers, of course, timelines, but most of them are activities. They even had one option that was a play. Typically when you come to the optional enrichment projects, there will be any number of them. So sometimes there is, 2 options, sometimes there's 4 or 5. So it just depends on the book and the lesson, and they're all going to be different, but it's all going to relate to the material that they learned that week. So make sure that you take a look at those and don't skip them every time. Make sure that you do some because they are really fun. Now, another point I would like to make is that for a lot of these classes, especially like reading and history, I really recommend bringing the family together for discussions, or at least a one-on-one with the homeschool teacher and the child. That really helps give depth to the lesson, and it really shows you as a parent how well they're understanding the material. Now for this, I have other videos on my channel where I talk about how I go over material before I present it or before I have the discussion with my children. But that doesn't mean like you have to read the chapter constantly, like right before. Now, I have been known, especially with the shorter chapters, I do read those before we sit down and have a discussion because I want to make sure that they understand the material. And the best way for me to do that is to read it myself. But some of these chapters are really long, like this government book. Some of the chapters are pretty lengthy. So sometimes what I do is I have a little cheat code for this, and I have a video on my channel for that, and I will drop it down below. But some of these are just so fruitful for discussions, and But some of these chapters create some of the best family discussions, especially with the Generations brand, because everything really ties back to scripture. So I highly, highly recommend having some kind of family discussion after your child completes the reading and maybe even does their assignment, and then you can go over together and really talk about the chapter. And these prove good for a couple things. One, of course, like I mentioned, making sure that they understand the material, and two, bringing depth to the lesson. You really want to bring that depth in by asking them critical questions and having them think critically, and maybe bringing up points that they hadn't seen when they were reading the material. Or a lot of times they could say things that help you with your understanding or make you think differently about the material too. There's so many fruitful discussions that can come out of these. And the last thing that I would mention too is that I know with Generations and Master Books, I think as well does this. I know Apologia, there's multiple companies that have books that are for elementary, middle, and high school. Now with those, most of those elementary books can be interchanged between all different grades in elementary. The same thing with middle school, the same thing with high school. As long as you're doing one of the high school level books, the books are for 9 through 12. And the books in the elementary category are for grades 1 through 6 or 1 through 5. You just got to check the website. And with that, that means if you have kids who are kind of lumped together like that, you don't have to buy a different curriculum for everybody. And you can have one curriculum for one subject, and you're having more meaningful discussions and you're doing more with that curriculum because everybody has the same one and you have more time to do that. I feel like being able to school children around the same age with the same material is going to free you up for other things. And one of the things that frees you up for is going deeper into the lesson and doing more with that lesson. So if you have children that you can put together like that, really look into that, because you will be able to do so much more with it just because it's going to give you more time to do so. And you'll be able to do more of those projects and have more fun because you're not so spread thin trying to teach a different book to each child for each subject. All right, those are my tips for today. I hope that it was helpful, and I hope that you were able to glean something and be able to apply it to your own homeschool in this video. Let me know, what is a trick that you use to get the most out of your curriculum? All right, guys, I will see you in the next video. I hope you have a great rest of your day and happy homeschooling.